learned a lesson at the Payson Meet the Candidate that we failed to implement here, and that was name tags in front of all of the candidates. So I'm going to tell you their names, and you're just going to have to remember, and I apologize. So we got one more chance to get that right then. All right, so in order from David, David Hathaway is a current city council, along with Lynn Mitchum next to him. Nico.
Forevermore.
And I don't know, is Brian related to Lynn?
A little bit, yeah. Well,
How are you related? Okay, so Brian Meacham. Nico. I'm so sorry. Okay, so Brian Meacham, and then who's next to you? So that's Brian Del Rosario and Travis Kell. I can't read my own writing. So Travis has a J in front of his name, but I assume that you just call yourself Travis.
it's a silent J.
Okay. And then we have Michael Romero. So hopefully you'll do a better job remembering these names than I did. So.
Again, please.
They're going to get a 2-minute introduction where you're going to really get to know them, and then you'll remember their names. So please state your name one more time when you do that. So tonight we are honored to have our state legislator, state representative Doug Welton here. Doug's been serving in the legislature for 3 years now, and he knows this area well. He's your representative, so if there's a need that you have, grab him before he leaves tonight. Make sure he's got that on his docket for next year. So I'm going to turn the time over to Doug Welton.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. This is an amazing event, and I'm a big fan of civic engagement. For those of you who don't know very much about me, I teach high school at Salem Hills High School. I teach debate, philosophy, current issues, and Japanese. Don't ask me how they all mix together, but they do. But with that, civic engagement is really important to me, and so having you all show up here at this level is vitally important to your community. And I would argue that your local government is probably the area where the rubber hits the road more than any other level of government. There are vitally important things that we do at the state and at the federal level, but your everyday interactions is decided by these individuals. Jim asked me to recommend that you bring your young adult kids to these events, and they're not here, so I can't make a pitch to them, but I tell my high school students all the time that you have to live with the decisions that these folks do or don't make longer than anybody else, because you're younger, so you're going to be around a little bit longer. Anyway, that's enough about me, but I'm grateful to be here, grateful to be in this beautiful building, and Santaquin's a beautiful area. So we are going to start on this side with Dave Hathaway, and we'll move down the line, and then each question we're going to rotate one to the north, one that way, they're right. So everybody's got a chance to be first and middle and last, because sometimes it's kind of nice to have the first word and not have to repeat what everybody else said. So they'll have 2 minutes for all of their questions, and what I hope happens and what should happen is this will, as they answer questions, they may not answer everything that you want to know, but it should give you an idea of who they are, and then they're going to stick around afterwards and they're going to mingle, and you can ask and answer any questions that you have to follow up and dig in a little bit deeper. So.
And just so you know, we've got timers in the back, so we'll be holding up a 30-second, a 10-second, and a stop. Now, when you see that stop, please stop. Hopefully you can see back there.
Okay. Also, a big shout out to Jim Rowland, Diane with the Payson Santaquin Chamber of Commerce. They've done tremendous work for our businesses, our communities, and putting together these events. So it's been a big round of applause. Okay, first question is just a self-introduction. Tell us about yourself.
All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is David Hathaway.
Can you stand, please?
What?
Can you stand up, please?
Oh, sure. So I'm David Hathaway. I was born and raised in Payson. I moved a whole 7 miles to the south. I've been here for about 42 years now, and I've made Santaquin my home. It's a beautiful place to live. I've had the opportunity to serve on several things. When I first got here, I was on the, Public Works. Then in '91, I was lucky enough to be voted in as a city council. And then in the middle, I spent 10 years on the fire department and 13 years on the ambulance, the EMT. Then of course, I come back to politics on 2014. And I've enjoyed every minute of serving the city and being a part of the city.
I'm Ed Meekum. I've been in Santaquin now 36 plus years. My wife and I moved here, thought we'd only be here a short time. We fell in love with Santaquin. We love this little city that's not so little anymore. And we love to serve and give back. We have 7 children, 17 grandchildren, and most of them are still here in town. So we've done our part with the housing and all that stuff, because we're still having kids and grandkids stay here. And it's because they love Santaquin also. My wife and I have had the opportunity in the last couple of years to travel a little more than we had previously. And one of the reasons I'm running again is we're growing fast here in Santaquin. And I know that's not ideal for everyone, and most of us on the council feel the same way. But I've seen large cities that still have a small town feel. So it's possible to maintain that. And that's my goal. We need to maintain this small town feel no matter how big Santaquin gets. And I've seen smaller towns and cities that have not done a good job. And people don't want to be there anymore, and they're trying to get away. And we want to avoid that at all costs. I think we're doing a really good job right now. Mayor Olson is doing some great things. The previous mayor, Mayor Hunsaker, previous councils have laid the groundwork, and we've done a good job. And I think we just need to continue to do that. Thank you.
My name is Brian Meekum. I was born and raised here. They moved here after they had me. This is my hometown. I love everything about Santaquin. So much so that this is where me and my wife live. I'm not going anywhere. I love this city. My biggest thing with the reason that I'm running is I've worked for Santaquin City for 20 years. And there are some employees, well, the majority of the employees here, they give so much to this city that they don't take credit for, they don't get paid for. They just work so hard for the city. And one of my goals, my main goal I would say is to be a voice or to be an advocate for these employees that work so hard. When you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth, you flush the toilet, things go where they go, everything is taken care of, from you going out driving on the roads to having water in your home, having recreation activities to go to, a library to go to. There's so much that happens in this city, and it's because of these employees that work so hard. I love recreation. My love is outside, hunting, fishing, golf, softball. I absolutely love being outside and playing sports. I do love what Santaquin City does with recreation, and I would love to help them do even more. Bring more recreation facilities, bring more recreation things into Santaquin, and that's me.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Rosario. My wife and I have lived in Santaquin for about 4 years. We have 2 young daughters. So like what Doug was saying, I have a lot at stake. I'm probably, not to call anyone out, the youngest person up here. But my wife grew up in Santaquin, so we have a lot of friends and family in town, and we love it. There's so many good people here in Santaquin. I think one of the most important things of Santaquin is its small town character. That's one of the things we love about here. People are so generous and so good. And a lot of that has to do with how us as neighbors are. I think, as Santaquin grows, because it is growing, because a lot of people have children that are moving back. My wife and I being, in that camp. There's a lot of great people that are buying new and existing homes. And I really think the epitome of a small town is a town where everyone feels like they belong. And where we get to know each other and we help each other out regardless of our differences. And I love that about Santaquin. That's what I've encountered with my immediate neighbors and even city staff and with everyone across town. There's a lot of things outside of our control, and I like to focus on things that are within my control. And you know, on city council, I really want to focus on what's within the control of city council. Creating a community where people belong, that's all of you guys, and that's all of us. But city council has some things that we need to focus on. I want to make sure that I don't forget anything. So, you know, and as a resident, I want to be the best neighbor because that's my ultimate goal as a person that lives here. But I just want to invite all of you to share with your friends and family that have not been able to make it for one reason or another, what you've learned from here, because there's so many great candidates. Everyone here is highly qualified, and I'm so grateful to be, you know, working with them.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Jay Travis Kill. Like I shouted earlier, the J is silent, so just call me Travis. My wife and I moved to Santaquin about 6 years ago, and we've loved it. We moved here from Delta, and we tried to figure out why we waited so long to come here. I served in the military when I was younger, and I've been a law enforcement officer for almost 19 years. I served my country and my community, and I love my country. I'm very patriotic. I had the opportunity to serve on the Delta City Council when I lived in Delta. I currently work for Payson Police Department, and I work at the Payson High School, and like Doug, I teach a class, but my class is in life lessons. Just joking. But I do teach a small class there. A few things that I really enjoy and that I love about small government is our job as Payson City Council, if you elect me, is to decide how's the money spent. Did I say Payson? I work for Payson. I'm running for Santaquin City Council. Sorry, I get those two confused. Santaquin City Council's job is to decide how's the money spent when the taxes come in, and property rights. Those are probably the two main issues that they deal with when it comes to citizens and how things work. I promise you that I will make responsible decisions. Being a law enforcement officer, I know how to make hard decisions that make people unhappy. And working on city council, I can tell you, you make half the people happy, the other people mad, and then the next decision, that switches. So I'm prepared to make those hard decisions, and I'm prepared to tell you why those decisions were made. I'm gonna tell you that I don't have all the answers, but I know where to find them, and I have a strong moral compass. And so, in conclusion, I think that Santaquin offers a lot of services that are great, and I wanna continue to figure out how to make those services work, and to continue how to operate, and with the lowest budget and charging the least amount of tax as possible. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you all coming out tonight to learn about the candidates and to find out what our ideas and visions are for the city. My wife and I have been residents of Santaquin since April 2021. In 2020, I retired after 30 years in the insurance claims administration industry, working for third-party administrators, handling arbitration and mediation cases involving personal and commercial lines insurance. That same year that I retired, my wife and I decided to downsize, so we sold our home that we lived in for 20 years in Murray, and we traveled for several months before we actually settled here in Santaquin. When we moved in here in Santaquin, I immediately became involved in the community. And the first, excuse me. Oh, the microphone, sorry.
You gotta hold it right in front of you.
Oh, right here, sorry. Well, the first year I was here, I was hired by C.S. Lewis Academy, which is a charter public elementary school in our community. I was hired as a teacher to their WIN program. The WIN program works with students who English is their second language, where we teach them how to speak, read, and write so that they can function in the classroom. This is a Title I school, so there's most of the kids that come to the school are from low income backgrounds. sorry. Every, November, we provide, turkeys, to 20 of the poorest families in the school. Already ran out of time. Sorry. Come and talk to me at the table, because I got a lot of stuff to tell you.
Say your name.
Mike Romero.
Okay, thank you. One reminder, to get here, the microphone, you have to almost swallow it. It's a very sensitive microphone, so hold it close if you want to make sure everybody can hear your words of wisdom. All right, next question. This comes up, this was brought up by one of the candidates, and it's an important issue as communities grow and you try to identify your community. So the question is, what are your thoughts on personal property and land rights in Santaquin? And particularly couch this in with the potential for growth that's happening as well.
That is one of the things that we deal with quite often. We have to maintain the property rights of the owner. They need to be able to expand their property, build on it if they want to. As long as it fits in with the city code, then we need to have it. We need to respect our farmers and the orchards, beautiful orchards that make Santaquin what it is. We want them to stay and have that as long as they want to be here. And we have done a good job, I feel, at least our city code encompasses that right now, but there is more to do. We need to be ready as we grow. Like I said, we need to maintain the small town feel as we grow, which means helping people maintain that right of their property. We were talking with the citizen before we started tonight of some of the utilities just coming in our yard and when we're home even and not checking with us. Some of those things we need to check on and make sure those don't happen. A knock on the door would be nice. So we have to maintain the citizen, the property owner's rights. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Somebody who owns land, we need to be respectful of that. And it's a tricky subject because somebody building something on their property may end up decreasing the value of somebody else's property, right? That's why we have zoning, the planning and zoning board, which they do an amazing job. That's why we have certain areas of Santaquin that we can have commercial, different zones that have residential. But when it comes down to it, we need to be able to, I'm a firm believer that it's your house, it's your property. You need to be able to do on that what you see fit. And it is a treading lightly because you do get into what if that's decreasing the value of somebody else's home, which goes back into planning and zoning board, which do an amazing job. I do agree with keeping Santaquin to feel small. Our farmers and orchard farmers built this community. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, this whole town was orchard. There was only 2,000 people that lived here. Now there's closer to 20,000. That orchard feel is what I love about Santaquin. I love that people can have horses and chickens and small hobby farms. Those go back to the property owner's rights to have that in their property. That's what I believe on that.
Wow, everyone's so great, and it's great for me to learn about all the candidates. In terms of property rights, I think we need to respect that. What is within the city's control? As city council, you will be choosing the zoning, the code, and the ordinances within the city, and voting on that. I think it's important for us as a city council to review what benefits. So I think that's important as city council to review, hey, what parts of the code benefit that small town feel? I think that's what we all want. Santaquin is gonna grow, but I think there's also other ways that as a city council member that you can work within the property rights of the owners. One is being the zoning. Do we want to convert more commercial zoning to residential? That's something that I'm not a big fan of. I think we need more businesses, small businesses in Santaquin to help us grow and have a sustainable budget. And one of the things is also, I moved into one of those new communities where a big builder was building, and they came before city council and asked for changes. And I think a lot of us, that live there probably weren't a big fan of some of the changes that they wanted to change in the city code. I think it's important for city council to not just pass off every change or request that a big builder brings in, but seriously consider that. Like I said before, how does that affect the neighbors? And how does that affect the people that are living in those communities? And preserving that small town feel. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we can respect property rights, but at the same time, city council isn't, helpless in respecting property rights but maintaining our small town feel. And so I think those are just some of the many ways that city council can address those issues.
Property rights are fascinating. It's kind of a double-edged sword. I think that I should be able to do whatever I want on my property, the same as like Mike Romero. But when I start a 70s disco and start running out of my house and he gets loud at his house, he's not gonna like that. So while I appreciate that we want property rights and we should respect property rights, I think that's kind of a double-edged sword. We need to make sure that we figure out where my rights begin and Mike's, or my rights end and Mike's rights begin, just for an example. Like an individual has property rights, I believe these developers and our commercial property owners, they have property rights too. One of the big issues that people have asked me about is high-density housing. Being a law enforcement officer, I don't have a lot of good experiences with high-density housing, but I also have a 22-year-old kid living in my basement because he can't afford a house to live in. So while, I think everything has its place, and I think it's important for the city to plan and decide where's the best place to put these things and how's the best way that we can make these things function. For example, I don't like high-density housing on Main Street. I don't think that was a good idea. I don't think that was a good plan. I think that space should have been reserved for businesses. We have high-density housing coming up in Summit Ridge. That's my neighborhood. Like I said, I don't like high-density housing, but that's a good place for it. The roads are better. We can plan and decide how are we going to, provide utilities and services to these units and things like that. I grew up in a small farming community, so I totally appreciate and I value the impact that our orchards have on our community. And I wouldn't support any kind of ordinance or law change that would force them out of business absent any kind of like emergency scenarios, like health and safety kind of a thing. So property rights to me, they're fascinating. I think it's important to weigh the options and there should be no absolutes. So.
Okay, property rights are very fundamental, okay? And property rights are also protected under the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. In local government, the big challenge is the balance between governmental action or regulation versus private property rights. Like if you look at the U.S. Supreme Court, when somebody thinks that their property rights have been infringed, you have to prove that the regulation has made it where you can't sell your property. And when you go through the court system, the court puts the burden on the property owner to prove that the governmental action is a taking, therefore qualifying the property owner for compensation. But there's also some states, and Utah's one of them, this passed legislation that it has now shifted that burden of proof to the municipality or the governmental unit to prove that their regulation or action is not a taking of a person's property. So anytime the city decides to do something, to put in a road somewhere or maybe put a park somewhere that affects somebody's property, the burden is upon the government to show that that's not an economic impact on the property owner's rights. And if it is, then they're entitled to compensation. So that's how we need to look at it.
I 100% believe the property owner is the say of their property. And the issue I have with what's going on now is, and I don't wanna pick on Doug, but the state legislators have decided to, because of the growth, they feel that they wanna take on and put a burden on the cities to, I'm gonna use the word, to be more friendly to, taking restrictions and they even want us to change commercial to residential. And the problem I have with that is that it's like the state's basically saying, okay, you guys are gonna deal with a moderate income housing plan, and if you don't do that, we're gonna withhold, B and C road funds. Well, that almost sounds to me like federal government. Government likes to give out these orders, but they don't wanna fund anything. So, a bill that went through last year was a bill where they wanna come in and let a developer take a chunk of ground, pull the property taxes off it, and build the infrastructure, build their high density, and then turn it over to the city. The problem I have with that is that the state doesn't look at the consequences of those things. Meaning that they don't look at the transportation issue that causes. And number two, none of them wanna talk about the water issue. There's gonna be a water issue no matter what. So the state of Utah, just to give you an idea, there's 850,000 people in Utah County now. They're predicting 1.2 million in 3 more years. They're coming. But what irritates me is the state's gonna dictate. Oh, I gotta stop.
Okay, not used to feeling I need to give a rebuttal. For what it's worth, I think that the best decisions are made at the local level. I did not support that. Anyway, next question. This was brought up by a couple of you. And it's a question a lot of people around the state have right now, with that increasing inflation, and which has brought up prices for a lot of things. And so the question is, what are your thoughts on budget and fiscal responsibility in Santaquin? And can you please share those with us?
Yeah. This is a fun one. I feel like the budget in Santaquin overall has actually been handled really well, from the employees, the city council, to us as citizens. In Santaquin, up until recently, the budget has been relatively small. Our income is low. We've based it off of impact fees for a long time, and that's why we've seen an increase in tax this year, is because of different planning and things that we've done, which have been nice. We haven't had a tax increase in a long time. That tax increase was coming one day, whether we wanted it or not. The fact that it came this year may be hard on some of us, harder on some of us than others. But what I would like to see, as far as that goes with our budget, is to see a smaller chunk of these taxes, maybe even on an annual basis, like other cities do, to where that's filling in for the cost of inflation, rather than waiting and playing using the impact fees as trying to budget with those, and then doing a big tax years down the road. I think that would help as well. I liked what Brian said, with the more businesses that come in that are paying taxes to the city, for them to have a bigger budget, that helps. Local business, those that are living in Santaquin who like to run businesses, I think that's a great idea. That helps increase the budget, and it helps us to have more money to spend. Real quick, I love how the city works already, and if you don't know, I would encourage you to look into it, because the way the budget is set up by the employees, it works all the way from like the lowest employee, and it works its way through the directors on needs that the employees have to have. And we work on a shoestring budget. The employees don't have all the resources that they need all of the time. And so there's ways that we can use that increased revenue as well.
So in terms of the budget, there are two things in the budget, right? Income and expenses. I think the city does an amazing job of managing our expenses. We run on very, very little. I think it's somewhere between $15 to $21 million is the expenses, and that seems like a lot, but to run a whole entire city with so many employees, that's really an amazing feat. The thing that I think that we really do need to focus on, and Brian also mentioned, is in the past we relied on impact fees, and that helped Santaquin grow without raising, residential property taxes. But at the same time now, there's not a lot of construction, there's not a lot of impact fees coming in, and so the city had to dip into the emergency fund, which was super responsible to set up that emergency fund and max it out. And so we've been fine this year. But I think that as a city council, we need to be working to ensure that Santaquin is open for business, for small businesses to come in. Commercial property taxes don't get that residential discount that you might notice on yours. In addition to that, we get sales tax. A lot of the development that we're getting over by Macy's, that's bringing in a lot of sales tax. And if we can work on the income part of the city budget, making sure that businesses come here and that we get development, then we can reduce our reliance on impact fees and then as well residential property tax fees. I think last year was 30%, a little over 30% was impact fees. That's a lot to be relying on new construction. And Santaquin did what it had to do, but I think that if we can focus on getting more businesses in here, we can get a higher sales tax base to keep our residential property taxes lower. The ideal, I think, for everyone would be to not have our residential property taxes raised. And so as much as we can do to avoid that through business development, that would be great. And so really just focusing on the income. The expenses are great, but the income for the city is what we need to focus on.
I feel like you need to stand up and say hello every time I do this, so. I'm gonna say something that my mom would slap me for. Inflation sucks. This year, our budget, had a shortfall. And this year, our city council voted to raise our property taxes by 10%. And that sucked too. But guess what? Santaquin City works on a fixed income just like a lot of people do. When inflation goes up, fuel prices go up, the cost of services and other materials goes up, Santaquin has to pay for that. And that money's gotta come from somewhere. So the real question is where should that money come from? We can, the city's responsibility is to provide certain services. When I turn the faucet on, I want water to come out. When I flush the toilet, I want that water to go away. When I need to go to the store, I want a nice road to drive on. When, anybody here on the fire department? Okay, when I call the fire department to come fill my basement up with water, I want them to show up. Sorry, I'm a cop, we have that little, we have that thing. And when Michael Mayor's running a 70s disco out of his house and it's thumping at 2 o'clock in the morning, I want the cops to show up and shut him down, right? I give Mike a hard time. So these services, they cost money. And Santaquin City does a really good job of trying to operate on a low budget, but it's expensive. By the time you have employees with wages and benefits, and then you gotta pay for vehicles and fuel, it costs money. So we just need to decide, where do we want that to come from? Property taxes are probably the most stable form of income, but it's probably the most painful. Sales tax, I think, is probably the best way to generate revenue where we get some of that back. And if I can go spend my money at Macy's and some of that money's gonna come back and I still have that box of Oreo cookies and milk that I can take home and make myself fatter with, I think that's less painful. And I think Santaquin City should really try and focus on bringing in more businesses and generating more revenue that way, as opposed to raising fees and everything else for the services they provide.
Okay, the city right now runs in a real tight budget. They're doing a real good job with the little that they have. But, the biggest challenge that the city's facing, like every community in Utah County, is growth. With growth comes cost. So, in order for the city to be able to cover the services that it's providing and to mitigate any tax increases and still making it where people can still afford to live in Santaquin, we have to develop the business sector of our community. We need to bring more businesses where we can generate sales tax, maybe even create jobs so that people can stay here in Santaquin and also spend their money here in Santaquin. this would be the primary thing that I think should be a priority in this little community, because the growth is coming, it's coming really quick. And Santaquin is doing some real important decisions to prepare for this. But if we don't develop businesses here in our community, you know, we're gonna be mad again like this year. Everybody was really angry because we had to have property tax, because we couldn't afford to pay our fire and police and emergency services. Something to think about. Thank you.
Well, I agree with a lot of this. The thing that's interesting is that unless you sat through a 2-day, a budget hearing, which we do every year, and the directors of every department comes in and lays out the needs and wants of what they need. And we spend 2 days going through that and trying to figure out what is necessary and what's not. And there's a lot of things that this city never gets to get because the budget just isn't there. So by the time the budget's finalized, it's been cut down to what revenue you have. And a lot of things we don't, the city does without, and hope that someday that budget is there. So I've been watching, and it's been interesting to see the turn that we've got away from, and I call it living on impact fees, because that's unsustainable no matter how you look at it. So the last 2 years, there's been a effort put towards bringing a sales tax here. Between getting businesses and the start of the industrial park out there that'll bring jobs and sales tax, I believe that's the direction that we need to keep going and keep building the sales tax, because I am not and will never be in favor of property tax increase. There's a lot of cities now that do that every year, and to me, that's just a burden on everybody.
I just need to say ditto what everybody else said. It's hard to answer these questions when you're last. But like Dave said, our city has to balance its budget. It's required by the state government that cities have a balanced budget. And so whatever rumor you hear about Santaquin being broke, it's not true. We have a balanced budget. And we just have a smaller budget than some of the bigger cities. So everything else that's been said here is true. We need to bring in business. That helps bring in sales tax and property tax. That helps us so we, as citizens, don't have to pay as much. Like Dave said, as city council, we meet for 2 days every year. Last year we met 2 different times because we were a little short. And you're not allowed to be short. You have to balance your budget. And we meet in that meeting to make sure that we have the necessities here in Santaquin. And of course, all of us, I can say one of my top issues in Santaquin is always going to be safety. It is for everybody else on the council too. So we have to put money into our police, our fire, and our ambulance. And I'm always going to be in favor of that, because that helps maintain that small town feel. If it's not safe for you to go on a morning walk, or let your kids walk to the neighbor's house, then it's not a small town feel anymore. So we have to do that to maintain that feel.
Okay, next question for Brian Del Rosario. Did I say it correctly?
Yeah.
Right, Meacham and Cal, and you'll be called far worse if you're a candidate or you get elected, so if I mess it up, it's okay. All right, so Brian, the question we're gonna kick off for you is, what would you do to promote citizen involvement in Santaquin City?
Yeah, so this is something that I think is really important. Anytime someone wants to get involved in city in involvement in the city government, right? Is that what we're specifically talking about, or just in overall community?
The community in general.
Yeah.
I think, as a former elected official, I would say they want to know what you're doing.
Yeah. You know, I think this is an area that Santaquin City can improve on a lot. We have such great staff and employees and city council members. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people maybe posting on Facebook or reaching out. There's a city newsletter, but I think we can do a lot more. You know, one time I decided I wanted to go to the property tax increase town hall. I showed up, the doors were locked. There was no way to get in and nobody to help me. There was no sign outside. These types of things happen, and say you want to give feedback. Where do you go on the website? It's kind of hard to find that place. And I work in tech, and I'm still like, this website's so confusing. And you know, that's not to say that nobody's not doing a good job. I just think that we can improve on that. I think there's a lot of ways that we can meet people where they're at. Sometimes you might hear it a lot, well, they didn't show up to the city council meeting, so they must not care. Well, I'll tell you right now, I got 2 young kids at home. It's hard to show up to things sometimes. So how can we make it so that other people who maybe might not be at the same stage of life or might not have the same time be able to give input? We need to meet people where they're at and reach out to people. And I know that, you know, I, as a potential city council member, I would love to make sure that our city does as much as possible to reach out to, in so many different ways that's feasible and doesn't cost us a lot of money, but reach out to people so that everyone can be involved. Because I know a lot of people do, and it's not just out of laziness, but it's because there are certain limitations. And so I hope that that's a way that we can improve as a city.
It's kind of a tough question, because there's lots of different aspects when you talk about citizen involvement. Do we want, you know, our recreation department here is awesome. You can just about do whatever you want to do, and if you can find somebody that wants to coach that, they'll make a class for you. So I think our recreation department does a bang-up job. Our library is fantastic. I wish we had $11 billion to throw at our library so that they could do all the things that they want to do, because it's not just a place where you go and check out books, right? There's lots of things that you can do there, and I think that's awesome. So when we talk about citizen involvement, one of the questions that I have is, how big do you want your government to be? We talk about, I made a comment the other day about government, how government works, that, you know, it's important for citizens to be involved in the government process, and that's the way this government was designed to work. And somebody complained that, you know, when you just see a vague message on Facebook, that's not enough. Well, our city runs a website. It's not completely user-friendly, but it's government, so it's not going to be Facebook, right? How much money do you want to spend on that? But I had a hard time programming the VCR when I was a kid, but I figured that out too, right? Is there anybody not old enough to know what a VCR is? Anyway, Santaquin City has their website. They post information in the newsletter that's mailed to our house. They put things on Facebook. I'm sure they're probably on Instagram and other places. Do we want people coming around and banging on our doors and robocalls? I mean, I guess you decide how big you want your government to be and how far you want your reach to be. I didn't have a hard time finding what I needed to find when I wanted to get involved in government. So as far as citizen involvement and recreation type things, I think Santaquin does a great job, and we need to continue to do that. As far as anything else, I guess that just depends on how much money we want to spend.
Citizen participation is really very important, and where it really starts is in our community, there's always challenges. And how do you find out where those challenges are, and what can we do as citizens to try to address them, to make this community great for everybody to live? There's a lot of people that work behind the scenes that are doing these things, that do it not for attention, but because it's the correct thing to do. For example, in our community, you know, believe it or not, there are people that are hungry and can't pay their bills. You know, we have people in our community that are living in single units, multiple families, because they're not making enough money. And so I think as an elected official, the elected official should be the catalyst to let the community know, these are the problems. So that, because people are always looking at ways of how do I get involved, okay? Like, my colleague here just mentioned it, it's kinda hard to find out, because it's not always advertised. You know, that, this neighborhood has all these people that are hungry, let's bring food, or let's raise, do a fundraiser, things like that. And if you're an elected official, it's your responsibility, I think, to stay involved with the community, because that's the only way you can understand what the needs are or what the concerns are of the community. And once you know those things, you can articulate that to get people, because I am confident, because this is a great community. People are willing to help, and they will come out once they know what the problems are. Thank you.
So, for the last 4 years, I've asked the council and the mayor, what can we do to get information to the people? And we've discussed many things. We do have websites, we have, the council meetings are on YouTube, you can watch them, you can, and keep up on what's going on. The question is a hard question, because no matter what, to me, it comes back to how involved does the citizens wanna be with it. I've tried, and I've for years, I've always posted stuff on the community sites to try to keep people updated on what's going on. But I've learned that people have a life, they live their lives, they take care of their kids, they go to school, they go to work. And the last thing that they got time for is to sit and watch YouTube on a council meeting, because they are boring. I've talked to the council about some kind of electronic sign to put up stuff that lets people know. The problem is that's all cost. That's all cost. We were told that, you could go down the route like Provo. Provo has 6 people that do nothing but give out information about Provo City. But that's at about $100,000 per person. We ain't got that kind of money for that. So to me, it's a struggle, and it'll be a struggle that I will continue to try to work on and try to find the answer to. Because the more information that you guys have, the better things are.
Okay, citizen involvement. For 30 years living in this community, I attended maybe 2 or 3 city council meetings. When I was a scout leader, I would take the troop in so they could fulfill a requirement for citizenship in the community. That's about it. The last 6 years, I've attended a lot of city council meetings. And when people don't come to city council meeting, I tell the city council, I take that as a compliment. Because you elected us to take care of those things, so you don't have to. If you're coming to city council, it means you're mad about something, usually. And we don't want that. So if you're not coming, we hope you stay informed through other means, like Dave said, through social media or whatever it is, or through the website. So I don't worry about you not coming to city council meeting. I didn't come either when I wasn't involved. But you elect good people, and everybody up here, you're fine to vote for anybody. They're gonna do a great job. It doesn't matter who you vote for. But you need to vote for who you feel confident about. But being involved goes way deeper than that. It can be coaching, as Travis mentioned, coaching a team. You can be involved in many, many ways. We have several activities through the year in Santaquin. You can get involved through church. And the number one way I think we all need to be involved in, and we don't have a huge participation in Santaquin, is casting your vote. The ballot shows up at your house, whether you agree with that or not. Mail-in voting makes it easier. So everyone should vote. So I hope you spread the word. I know everybody here is gonna vote, or you wouldn't be here. So spread that to your neighbors. That's how you get involved and elect good people to run your city.
Going last is tough. These guys are all amazing. you really don't have a bad choice to make. Community involvement, I just want to say real quick, this community is amazing. I ran in the rec department for 6 years, and yes, there are, not everybody wants to coach. We have to have coaches, we have to have refs, nobody wants to do that either. But in this community, people step up. And if you want to see a really good example of that, this spring, we filled something like 30,000 sandbags as a community. Not just the employees of Santaquin, but the community of Santaquin. This really is a great community. Yes, we wish there was a higher turnout here. There's 20,000 people in Santaquin. We've got maybe 100. That's okay, we'll take it, right? But as a city council, I can't make people show up. I enjoy city council meetings for the most part, so I don't mind going to city council meetings, but it's up to you as a community, it's up to us as a community to be involved and to come out and participate. I think we have a great community, I really do. But another way that I think we all can contribute and become more involved in the community and become better citizens is by doing what we're already doing, which is having good families, teaching our kids good values, teaching them to be good citizens, and encouraging them to get involved and creating a good community that way.
I'm going to ask a question. I forgot to ask this earlier, and it seems very appropriate now. So I want to take a little survey and find out how you all heard about this event tonight. So I'm going to give you 6 options. And if this is how you heard about this event, please raise your hand. Did you hear about it through the city newsletter? How about the chamber social media? Nice. Chamber newsletter, kind of same thing. How about the candidates' website or personal invite to the candidates? Word of mouth, just neighbors talking to neighbors? And anything else, Alvin?
Santaquin City. Santaquin City's Facebook page.
The Facebook page in Santaquin City, okay. Social media, great. Thank you. Sorry,
That is good information. I think you're like an official here who wants to make sure they communicate with you, and it's hard to know what the best medium is to get information out to you. I'm going to skip the question I was going to ask, and I'm going to follow up on a question that was asked kind of brought up by one of the candidates. And the question is, in a democratic republic where we elect representatives, it's because we are busy, we've got 2 kids at home, and we don't have time to dig into everything. And so we elected individuals to make decisions for us while we were in absent. But one of the things we need to know is how do you make decisions? So what is your guiding compass? So when I'm sitting at home on those boring city council meetings, because they are boring unless it's a dog park that you're fighting over, like I want to know that what are your guiding principles, so I feel good about what I vote for. Does that make sense?
I think I prefer the last question that you didn't ask. I'm just kidding. Okay, so this comes easy for me because of the nature of my work. So I work for the Payson Police Department. I actually serve right now as a detective. And it's my job to gather information. And so like I said earlier, I don't have all the answers, but I know where to find them. So when it comes time to make a decision, I'm going to gather as much information as I can. I'm going to take a look at that information and I'm going to say, okay, what kind of impact is this going to have on our community? How much is this going to cost? And what's best? Because really when it comes down to it, I've had people ask me, well, what are you going to do when it's time to choose right or wrong? And right or wrong isn't as simple as we want it to believe it is. And here's an example for you. People who voted, who wanted another hot topic that comes up a lot is the rec center. It was on the ballot. Man, it got contentious, right? People who wanted the rec center, if I was to say I'm going to vote for the rec center, I'm right. And the people who don't want it are going to say I'm wrong. And vice versa. So it's not always about right and wrong. It's about what kind of impact is this going to have on the community. And of course I care about how you feel. But you gotta understand too, that like when a city council member gets their packet, they have a lot more information that they can use to make decisions. So my focus is always gonna be, what's the best for this community? And how's it gonna serve the community the best? So.
When you're electing a person to serve in office, you give them a lot of responsibilities. And one of the responsibilities is when they're having to make a decision, they've got to understand what all the facts are. They've got to understand what the cost and impact's gonna be on any decision they make in the community. Because in the back of their mind, what they have to remember is what decision will help the community as a whole. And it's always a balancing act. Okay, what is best for the community? And you have to be able to research issues if you and make sure that you feel good with that decision so that you could explain it to the people that voted you into the office. Because that is very important. And that's how I would make my decisions is, I would completely study the issues, weigh everything, and do what's best for the community.
So I've always looked at this is I take the information, I read the information, I try to apply how that information is going to affect everybody. But my philosophy's always been is my decisions are based on what's best for the whole community. Now, am I gonna sit here and tell you that there's a part of the community that's gonna not like a decision that we've made? But that to me is just how a human behavior is. But the decisions that this council makes is always, I feel like, they go into it with knowing that it's gonna impact most everybody. So, the best thing a council member can do is read the information, and even do some more research to find out and come up with the answer. Because there's impacts that is costly, so no matter how you look at these things. But I just feel like it's gotta be what's best for the whole, and no matter what happens. You've got to, I call it educate yourself. Each councilman needs to educate so they can make that educated vote or that decision when it comes time, and then deal with the consequences thereof. I have no problem with the experts online that thinks they're smarter than everybody. I'll take that, and that's fine, but hey, just do a little research and then let's come and have a talk about it.
Yes to what everybody has said. We educate ourselves and then we make the decision that's best for Santaquin as a whole. I'll give you a couple of examples. When Macy's, we were talking about having Macy's come into town. That was not ideal for everybody. That's right down the road from my house. And not all the neighbors were happy about that. Was it best for Santaquin? I still think yes. And I don't know many people now, they're sad we have a Macy's in town. Other decisions that maybe I backed that weren't as popular with everybody, I backed the rec center. I thought it was a good idea. That got voted down, and that's fine. That's why this is a democratic society and why that can happen. And I'm great with this building that's here now. It's a beautiful building. When we meet in city council, another thing that's unique about Santaquin and small towns like this, we talk about it when we get to city council. So all the citizens have talked to us, we've done our research, and then we talk as a mayor and council before we make a decision. And very seldom in this community, in this city council, do we disagree with each other. We have disagreements maybe on a small level, but when it comes to doing what's right for Santaquin, we almost always agree. Not always, we have had some little battles, and that's okay, that's part of that what we need to do. But most of the time we agree, because we're doing what's best for the city.
Yeah, this is a fun question, because how I would make decisions and how I would lead, my moral compass. This city raised me. There's good men and women in this room that helped raise me. Scout leaders, bishops, people all over in this room that I know that were part of my moral compass for what it is now. And it's not easy to be on the council. In 2008, we remember the WRF, the plant down, the sewer treatment plant that's down on the north end of town. That had it had toward the city in half. And I don't know that you could find somebody right now that would say that was a bad idea, because we have more water now because of it than any of the surrounding cities. It was a really good decision that had a very negative pull at the time. And so I think going into it, just like everybody else has said here, you've got to go with what's best for Santaquin City, and it might be best for Santaquin City 10 years from now. But I would love to be a part of that team that gets to look forward and gets to decide on what is best for this town and what's best for this city in the future.
Ditto just what the other Brian said is you have to have thick skin, right, as a city council member, because what you vote on, not everyone's going to agree with. And like he said, you have to think in the future, right? It's not just what's best for us now, but Santaquin's going to grow. I want my kids to be able to enjoy Santaquin. And I hope that they stay close by, right? Don't we all hope that our kids stay close by? But and so I have to look at the future, right? I have to identify who are the stakeholders, who is this going to affect? Each decision that you're making, who is it going to affect the most? If it's a personal property rights issue, who are the surrounding neighbors? Let me go talk to them. Do what's within my power. It's great to talk to city staff and employees that are in the thick of things, understand how they see it, balance that with residents. But it definitely, like everyone said, you have to be an avid learner. You have to be willing to learn and go into things understanding that you don't know everything. And I love learning. But I think also it's also important to understand, what is this candidate's vision for Santaquin? What do they envision for Santaquin? I love Santaquin. I want it to maintain its small town character. Does that mean I don't want growth? No, growth is inevitable and we have to grow. But what can we do to maintain that? And it's that type of thing that's going to go into the decision making that I make as a city council candidate. Understanding, does this help the citizens now and in the future? I understand that not everyone's going to be happy, but I have to take that into consideration. Who are the immediate stakeholders? Who are the people that are going to be impacted the most by this decision? And I need to do my research. And I think, a lot of the candidates here have echoed exactly that. So yeah.
Okay, the next question centers around growth. Obviously, that's a hot topic as growing communities. It's been mentioned numerous times by many of you. So how do you feel about growth in Santaquin City? What are your plans to influence and or control that growth?
Okay. You guys hear me? Okay, growth is inevitable. It's coming. And we gotta just be prepared and plan. We gotta be thinking long range as to what we need to address this challenge. For example, traffic. I know the city is working right now on expanding Main Street. They're in negotiation with a lot of stakeholders to deal with the interchange here on I-15, because already the traffic is backing up. They're trying to get the UDOT to start the project, because it was back in the back burner 30 years out. The mayor has been really diligent in trying to get the process moving, so hopefully it'll happen sooner. We gotta also decide long range, what kind of communities are we gonna have to deal with the growth? Because we can't be building, subdivisions where everybody has a yard and stuff if the growth keeps coming, because we're gonna run out of land anyways, you know? And we need to start thinking about walkable communities, transit-oriented communities where people don't need cars. And we gotta be able to figure out how to get people from point A to point B, because we can't get people moving around, it'll stagnate the economy of our community. So these are things that we have to be thinking about right now, so that we're prepared and we need to do it incrementally. Thank you.
Well, as I touched on it before, growth is gonna come. I remind people that from, you take Provo to Lehigh is what they consider landlocked. So the growth of the 1.2 million people will be west and south. So the growth is coming. The issue I have is I'm gonna pick on the state a little bit. The state is wanting to take the role and take the power from the cities, and I feel push the housing, because they know the people are coming. But the problem with that is that they're not looking at all of it. Like Mr. Rosario, the transportation, we have a transportation issue already today. It's not 5 years from now or 30 years from now, it's today. You got traffic backing up halfway down Main Street every morning. But the state doesn't wanna talk about that. Yeah, our mayor and this council has made strides in getting our exit on at least the radar now. And instead of being 30 years away from a new exit, we're hopefully within 6 or 7 years. But think about 6 or 7 years from now still, with that much more housing. But one of the biggest things that shocked me was our last city manager, I was talking to him one day when I seen the high density growth out of the south exit. I said, well, when did that come, when was that approved? He says, that was 20 years ago it was approved. I said, wait a minute, so that housing out there was approved 20 years ago? He said, yeah. I said, that's interesting. So, I think what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of the stuff that's been approved was approved years ago. I feel that that's not the best way to go. To me, our ordinances and our requirements need to be a little quicker than that. I think the city ought to be more involved. Sorry.
That goes by quicker than you think. Growth is interesting. As a council, when some of these developers have come in lately, because of what Dave just said, we've been pushing to not have any more high-density housing. We say, come back to us with a plan with single-family homes. And we can do some of that. And so we're trying to avoid 20 years from now, somebody saying, well, that was that dumb council 20 years ago that approved all those homes there. We're trying to get more single-family homes and not as much high-density housing, even though some of that is required. The state also requires low-income housing or cost-affordable housing. Well, guess what? That doesn't exist. In today's economy, there is, I think Travis mentioned, our kids can't find a place to buy a home. They can't afford a home. I've got 6 married children and only 2 of them own homes. So they have to rent, can't afford to buy a home. And that's too bad. And that's not our fault, but we have to have some of that high density housing because that is less affordable or more affordable than a single family home for most of these kids. The other thing, the big thing with growth to me is we have to take care of water. And Dave and I, the rest of the council, we watch really close on, do we have enough water? If we're gonna approve this subdivision where you get your water, and it can be paper water, it has to be wet water. Water we can actually use and drink. And so we're very careful about water, which is, we can't live without it, so we have to have that.
It's interesting that we've said growth is coming. Since I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, growth has always been in Santaquin. Like I said, there was 2,000 people when I was growing up. There's 20,000 now. It's just going to continue. And I think the city councils and the planning commissions, they've done a really good job for the most part, all the way through. Santaquin is a really well planned out city for the most part. Yes, we have some hiccups on Main Street. We have some hiccups in traffic, but for the most part, we've done a really good job. And you have to have a little bit, like what has been said as well, you have to have a little bit of the high density. You have to have a little bit of the, more affordable homes. That's part of a community, so that you can include everybody, so that our kids, grandkids can stay in this community. But I think we just really, my goal is to focus on planning and working with the planning commission and the zoning commission, that we are planning for the future, and that we have single family homes, that we have the higher density in smart places. As long as it's on those roads like Mike talked about, where people can get, who don't have cars, they can get where they need to go. The city council has done a great job. If you look at the plan, they've planned this out really well for decades before now. They've done a good job, and I just want to help continue that to move forward and continue to make Santaquin a good place to live.
Like everyone said, Santaquin is growing, and I think all of Utah is growing. And why is it growing? Because Utah's a great place to live. And why is Santaquin growing? Because Santaquin's a great place to live. All of us moved here for a reason. Probably because of the beautiful nature, the small town character, because there's family and friends, great people here. And so we can't stop that, We're just so desirable of a city, but there are things that are within our control, right? Like Dave said, some decisions were made in the past on how we grow. But I think it's important for us to be intentional about how we grow. As we look at the budget, we need more businesses. We need more business development to be able to support our budget. We have great city and staff that do so much with so little. We also want to avoid our property taxes increasing. And so I think that's an important way that we can focus on growing. We also need to, focus on what's in our control. So there are some things like transportation, right? Main Street and on-ramp, that's not the city, that's the state. And so we need to work with them. The city council's done a great job so far of really pressuring the state to help act on that. And because it is an issue, traffic. I think it's also important to understand, where are we going to allow new development? It is important to understand that there's an affordability crisis. It is so hard to own a home right now if you do not own a home already. To get into the housing market, it is so hard. I am grateful that I bought, right before the prices skyrocketed, but I'd be concerned about me being able to afford a home in this great place. And so we need to take that into account. And so there is a place for high density. That's a very subjective term. Some people say high density, it would be my home. I wouldn't consider that, but we need to take that into consideration so that everyone can stay in this great place. And so it's really important for the city to be proactive about that. Analyze our code, our ordinances, make sure that we zone correctly in what's in our control. There are some things that aren't. And then also pressure the state to help us with the things that they can control, like Main Street and other things.
I see Sarah Mellis standing back there in the breezeway, and I realized I forgot to give her a shout out for the awesome job she does with our seniors programs. We talked about the library and recreation, but there's a lot of good things going on in this city. Good job, Sarah. In case you haven't heard, growth is coming, right? I think it's important for Santaquin to plan ahead. It's just like when you go buy school shoes for your kids when they start school when they're 6 or 7 years old. You always buy them a little bit big so there's room to grow, right? I think it's important for Santaquin City to do the same thing. And they do a lot of positive things. I live up in Summit Ridge. They just built a new water tower, for lack of a better term, up there. They did that because it's growing and they saw the need. I know from going to Santaquin City Council meetings that there are other projects that are in the works. They're doing a lot of great things, but we can still do better. Again, I harp on the high-density housing right on Main Street. I don't think that was a great idea, but we need to figure out now, where are we going to put it? And when we do put it there, how are we going to get water to it? How are we going to get the water away from it? And are we going to have enough services with our emergency services, fire, ambulance, police, to take care of those needs when they arise. Working for Payson Police Department, especially at the high school, I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but they tore up Main Street like 3 times in the last 6 years. And they did that because they didn't plan ahead and they didn't put the pipes under the road big enough to accommodate the needs of the city at the time. So they tore it up, and then they realized, oh, well, we need bigger PI pipes, so they tore it up again. It's important for us to make sure that we don't have those same problems, because they had to pay to fix that road 3 times. So let's figure out, where are we gonna put this high-density housing? Where are we gonna put these commercial properties? And then let's start preparing now to do that. Just like this building. This building was made to grow into. There's a lot of extra space here, but you know, buildings aren't getting any cheaper. So they do a lot of great things, and I think that needs to continue, but like I said, we can do better.
Did you already go?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going last.
Okay, in order to make sure we get through some questions, the next question will be for the first 3 candidates. And so the 3 on the end don't get to answer this question, so if you want to hear about it, you can follow up with them individually, and then they'll get a question that these 3 don't get answered, so you can follow up with them individually, and then we'll have them close up. There's actually a lot of great questions, but you'll be here all night, so that's where we're gonna go. Okay, first question, starting right here with Dave. As has been mentioned, water has always been a concern in Utah. What are your concerns and plans for managing water in Santaquin City?
So one of the things that has been probably one of my number 1 issues has always been water. Even from this, when I was on the city council in '91, we talked about water. I'm fortunate enough with each councilman has assignments. 2 of my assignments is I sit on 2 water committees. One's called Sumwag, one's called Mountain Eagle Water, and it's a group of all the South County cities that we meet, and we talk about the issues with water and what's gonna happen in the future with water. There are cities in that group that have water issues now, but what's been really fortunate for Santaquin is clear back a long time ago, there was leaders that were smart enough to put together water shares and have enough water shares to carry us a long ways. We're in pretty good shape with culinary water. Down the road, we will need a little bit of secondary. The WRF has really been a big asset towards that. We do have CUP coming. If your Central Utah Water Project, water will be here in about 3 years. And once that comes, Santaquin has to start paying for that water, and it's a little more expensive. But Santaquin is in pretty good shape with water, and I just contribute that to a lot of forward thinking and moving forward. We look at keeping and maintaining the best quality water that Santaquin's got.
It's true. We're in great shape with water in Santaquin, and we want to stay that way. We don't have just enough water. We have plenty of water right now. That's how the last few years, when other cities were on water restrictions, couldn't water their lawn, we were still watering our lawns. We were okay. Because of great planning in the past, and that's the way we want to continue. With the CUP water coming, we're talking about not just our share, but we want to take some of the other cities' water that can't afford it or don't have access. We want to try to get their water if we can. We always want to plan ahead and have plenty of water. And that's, again, forward thinking. One of the council members, Keith Broadhead, mentioned several years ago, we need to figure out a way to pay for this water when it gets here, because it's expensive. So we started putting some money away in a fund to help pay for that water when it gets here. Other cities haven't done that, and they're gonna struggle to pay for that water. We have a budget already set aside for that. We can pay for several years of that water when it gets here. So there has been some great forward thinking on water. rest assured we'll continue to do that on the city council.
So I want to say just what both of us said. Santaquin is in a good place with water. I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn and approach on this question because I'm kind of a water nerd. I'm a part owner in a water treatment business, and my intake is looking forward. And I just talked to Norm and the Public Works director today about forever chemicals. There is an EPA standard that will be coming out on forever chemicals. It's in our water, we know it's in the water, but we don't know what that standard's gonna be. But it's gonna come and it's gonna be expensive to cities, it's gonna be expensive to treat. I just, like we've already said, looking forward, this is something that I would love to bring in my expertise to help Santaquin City solve this, because it is gonna be a water standard that we're gonna have to meet somehow to clean those forever chemicals out of the water. And yeah, I'm just excited to bring what I have and what I can contribute to the water. Like I said, the council's already been really forward-thinking with water. We're ready for more, where we can take on what we have. The fact that we didn't have the flooding as well, we have ways for water to go different places in Santaquin that most cities don't. We have water that we can water our lawns with when most cities can't. We're in a really good place, and as long as we keep looking forward, knowing that we won't be in a good place if we don't look forward, we'll be okay.
Okay, the next question is, do you have public safety concerns for Santaquin City, and how would you address these issues?
Okay, yeah, so I think Santaquin is a great place to live. For the most part, I don't really have any major public safety concerns. I think one of the most important things though, and I keep repeating myself, is that we need to make sure that we have enough money in our city to fund these things. This last property tax increase was intended to, and it was set aside for funding our emergency services, for our firemen and our police officers. And I think that it's important to make sure, just like they talked about water, we need to make sure that we have money and that we plan ahead. The city has done a great job, and city staff are doing so great at this, and making sure as city council people, what is within our control, and making sure that there is a budget, and that we do focus on, like I said many times, business development, so that we can make sure to have better income for our city to be able to fund these things.
I guess it's only right that I should get this question, right? We do have a lot of concerns with Santaquin City. This last 10% property tax increase was a Band-Aid. That Band-Aid was a temporary fix to fund raises for our first responders. Now, I'm gonna tell you, if you want good first responders, you've gotta pay for them. I came here for the money. I feel like I do a really good job, and I feel like Payson City is a benefit because, I mean, ask my wife, I'm good at my job, right? If we don't take care of our first responders by at least paying them what they need, they're gonna go somewhere else. And if our wages are lowest, who are we gonna get? Do you want cops and firemen that aren't that great and can't get a job anywhere else, showing up to your house and trying to find burglars or trying to put a fire out? Those are real concerns. Other issues we have is Santaquin's growing, it's getting taller. How are we gonna put fires out on 3-story buildings? You know, how are we gonna make sure that our trucks are old? Our fire chief will tell you, they're old. Some of them are, fire trucks expire. I didn't know that before. But at some point, they're gonna reach beyond their life expectancy. And right now, our police department is using cars for, 8 years? 8 years now. Do you want your first responders trying to get to an emergency in vehicles that are not reliable? Those are things that most people don't think about. I know I met a guy one time who told me that he went to a city in Arizona, and they're using like a 30-year-old Bronco to drive there. And I say, that's great and fine until like your baby's choking and the ambulance is trying to get to your house, but the ambulance breaks down. You know, I'm a little bit partial to first responders because I am one, but I also see how important it is to have properly maintained equipment and people who are worth having in your community.
Okay, I agree with Travis that with this recent tax increase to help pay for the fire, police, and the ambulance, that is a Band-Aid. As long as we're continuing to grow, there's always going to be pressure on the city to increase services. And the pressure also is they've gotta find a way to pay for these services. If we lose these services, there goes the quality of life. Heaven forbid that you have a heart attack at home and it takes an hour for the ambulance to come to your house to pick you up. By that time, it's probably too late, right? So that's a constant challenge that the city has, and it's with the other services as well. So the priority has always got to be to look at different ways of generating revenues to fund all the services in the city without having to raise taxes. And again, the big part of this puzzle is we have to bring business into our community so that we have a sufficient sales tax base to pay for all of this growth and all the services that we're gonna need to run our city.
Okay, this is the last question of the night. This will be the wrap-up question. Let me just, some things that we didn't touch on as much as maybe you would have liked to, that you may want to have follow-up questions, or you can address whatever you want in your follow-up question. Anything that you wanted me to ask and I didn't ask that you're just dying to get out, this is the time to say it. I would ask you and remind you, just make sure you state your names again, in case somebody came in late, so they all know who you are, since we don't have name tags up here. Some issues we didn't talk about that might be worth following up when we're done here. Green space, library, recreation, supporting business, economic development, transportation. Those are all issues that are important to communities that we have not touched on, so if you want to do a follow-up, you can. So 2 minutes, time's yours, and we'll be done.
So, I guess one of the issues that I have with, moving forward is that, again, my 3 topics is housing, water, and transportation. I am concerned with water because Governor Cox assigned a water czar to analyze all the water in Utah to figure out a way to save the Great Salt Lake. That's all good and well, but I'm following what's going on up there, and some of the things that I'm hearing, some of their ideas, I really don't like. And one of his ideas is to reevaluate what a water share is, meaning that he wants to look at taking what a water share and value of water is now, reevaluate that. You'd still have the share, there wouldn't be as much water tied to the share, which would free up water to go to the Great Salt Lake. Now, the Great Salt Lake is north, and my issue is that with Santaquin being in good shape with water, the last thing I want is them to redo that, and all of a sudden Santaquin is not in good shape with water. I will continue to be a voice with him and the other legislators up there that's dealing with this issue, and also the housing issue. I'm in contact with 12 legislators, and I let them know that I don't appreciate them coming in and basically telling a city how you're gonna do your housing. And I love the fact that our mayor and this council has done a good job of bringing our transportation issues to the forefront. And I just wanna say thank you to everybody, and I appreciate your support. I'd love to have your vote. And always stay positive and keep smiling.
My name's Lynn Meekum. I love Santaquin City. Like I said, I've been here for 36 plus years, gonna be here for a lot longer, and I will continue to make good decisions for the city. My son Brian is running against me. That ought to tell you something. Actually, I want to address that if I could real quickly. People have asked, what are you trying to do, take over the council? And I don't even think we're smart enough to do that. But I actually tried to talk him out of running, because this isn't easy. Being on the city council is hard. like has been mentioned, you have to have a thick skin, and at any given time, half the citizens can hate the decision you made, and they're not afraid to tell you about it. And that's okay, that's the way our government works. But it's not easy. And he is passionate about what he talked to you about tonight. That's why he decided to run. We didn't even talk about any of the issues of we could vote the same on this, or we could get this to pass. That didn't come up, I promise you. Our city government is clean. There's no corruption. These are great people on the council and great people running for council. You can't make a bad choice. So vote your conscience. I would appreciate your support. And again, I love Santaquin. I'm gonna be here and continue to help build Santaquin, bring in more business, and hopefully we continue with the small town feel that we have.
My name is Brian Meekum. I just love the city. I really do. There's 4, I guess, reasons why I would like to run. I just quit working for Santaquin City in July. I have worked for Santaquin City since I was 13 years old. Most of that was part-time, but a lot of it was full-time. I love working there. I had an opportunity come up where I was able to get involved with this business, and so I took it, and I love that just as much. But I just want to be a part of Santaquin City's growth. I want to be a part of what it's doing. I really believe that I have a unique perspective because I've lived here my entire life and because I've worked here for so long. I really want to be an advocate for the employees. I want to make sure that our fire, that our police, that our ambulance, that recreation, public works, all departments, planning, zoning, there are so many people that put in so many more hours than what they get paid for. We need to make sure that we're keeping those employees here and not losing them to other cities, to other opportunities. We need to make sure that Santaquin is a good place for these people. They do so much for us. Public Works crew, they'll be out plowing snow while you're at home opening presents on Christmas. There's just so much that they do, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of. My second thing is growth. It's here, it's always been here, it's going to continue to be here long after we finish saying it's coming. We need to make sure that we plan smart. Another one is I want to make sure that we're smart with the money, that every dollar that is spent is benefiting Santaquin and its residents in some way. And then the 4th thing is I do have a passion for recreation. That's where I spent a lot of my career. I want to make sure that we have facilities, that we have things that are up to date, and that this is a place that people want to come and enjoy and recreate and be a part of.
Hi, my name is Rosario. It's been great to hear from all the candidates. Like you, I'm also voting for 3 different candidates. So it's been really great. I have a lot at stake here in Santaquin. I love Santaquin. I want to stay here. I told my wife when we moved into our home, I said, I just would love to die here. She's like, please no, let's move to like a bigger home or somewhere within Santaquin, but stay within Santaquin. But I'm like, I just love it. But there are 3 things that I'm really focusing on. And I think that we can really focus on as a city council. And one is making sure that we plan intentionally for the growth. We need to be proactive, and city councils have worked on that as well, and we can continue improving. Make sure that Santaquin maintains that small town character and maintains being a place where we can raise families. Secondly, we need to continue to diversify city revenues. We cannot afford to live on impact fees. We need to encourage business development, and we need to encourage other ways to make sure that we can pay for the great services that Santaquin has to offer and the great professionals and staff that Santaquin employs. We have the best. And then thirdly, I think we can continue improving communication. We need to make sure that residents and potential businesses and current businesses know that Santaquin is a great place to live. We have such great services that the city offers. Let's make sure that every resident knows what great services we have. Brian mentioned the recreation. It is amazing what we have. And I think that it's important to make sure that people can take advantage of that. I think it's also an area of improvement where we can meet people where they're at. Like was mentioned, not everyone can go to city council, and hopefully not everyone goes to city council, but finding ways, I work in tech, and finding low cost or free ways to reach out to local residents and local businesses and potential businesses to make sure that we can get feedback, to make sure to plan better and and invite businesses to come do business in Santaquin.
Again, my name is Travis Keel. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. You could have been at home trying to figure out how the Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce relationship is developing on Facebook, but you chose to be here instead. And if you don't know what that means, then I apologize. I'd like to thank my fellow candidates here. People ask me, well, you know, they use the word opponent. I'm not running against these guys. I'm running for Santaquin City Council, and that's how I view it. I would appreciate your vote. I think I bring a few unique things to the table here. I've served on a city council before, so I have experience with this. I worked for a small governments for almost 19 years now. I kind of have the feeling of how they operate, how their budgets work. I can see the difference between wants and needs. I can see the difference between a wish list and a we really need this list. I love my country. I love my community. I believe that if you're not willing to make a difference, to do your part, to take part in the government process, then you don't have a right to complain. And so here I am trying to do my part, trying to make things as good as they can possibly be, make sure that Santaquin remains a place where I want my kids, my grandkids, their kids, whatever, to grow up and love their community as much as I do. My name is Travis Keel, and I approve this message.
My name's Michael Romero. I'm running for city council because as a homeowner and parent, I want to keep this community a great place to raise a family. I have many years of community experience and involvement necessary to be an effective representative of our community. I'm going to work hard and make sure that your voice is heard. You've heard tonight that there are many challenges ahead for the city, like affordable housing, traffic, and possibly water in the future. We need to start thinking about how to manage our inevitable growth over the coming decades. As a community, we need to engage in a conversation about growth. Asking questions like, what do we like about our community? What is it we want to preserve? What are going to be our greatest challenges in the next 20 years? Where does local government invest resources, and what policies need to be addressed to protect our quality of life? These are all the things that we need to consider when you're voting for a person to serve as city council for this next coming election. Thank you.
David, thank you all for coming out. Great amount of respect for anybody who's willing to throw their hat in the ring. So whether you're someone you're voting for or not, it takes a lot to put yourself and make yourself vulnerable. So let's give them another round of applause. For anyone that's interested, on a separate but related representative note, there's a town hall meeting that I will be hosting with Marlo Oaks and several representatives discussing ESG scores and any issues that you have at Spanish Fork tomorrow at the Spanish Fork Library at 7 o'clock. You're all welcome to come.
All right, and how about a hand for Doug Martin? Thank you. So we counted about 100 people came in and out tonight, so really good turnout. Really excited to see that. We are grateful to the candidates. The candidates will go to their individual tables now. If you have some individual questions you want to address with one or all of them, they'll stick around for as long as you have questions. I want to thank that awesome rec department for turning the heat